My relationship era began when my college teacher caught me off guard and loved me. I was 21 years old when Professor Morgan Hayes walked into my advanced literature seminar and shattered every wall I had spent years building around my heart. She didn't do it with grand gestures or deliberate seduction. She did it by seeing me, truly seeing me, when I had convinced myself I was invisible, unworthy of being noticed by someone so impossibly brilliant and beautiful. That September morning, with rain streaking down the windows and the scent of old books filling the air, I sat in the back row as I always did, hunched over my notebook, when she called on me to share my thoughts on Virginia Woolf's concept of truth in fiction. Her eyes, the color of dark honey, locked onto mine, and for the first time in my life, I felt like someone was reading all the words I had never dared to speak aloud. I had always been the girl who faded into backgrounds, who chose corners over center stage, who wrapped herself in oversized sweaters and kept her gaze down, because looking up meant risking being seen, and being seen meant risking rejection. My childhood had been a series of quiet disappointments, parents who loved each other more than they ever loved me, friends who included me out of pity rather than genuine affection, and a gnawing sense that something fundamental about me was wrong. When I realized at 16 that I was attracted to women, it felt like confirmation of everything I had always suspected about myself. I was different, I was other, and in my small hometown where conformity was currency, different meant alone. College was supposed to be my escape, my chance to reinvent myself in a place where nobody knew the girl who ate lunch in bathroom stalls or spent prom night watching movies alone in her bedroom. But old habits are harder to break than I imagined. I arrived at State University with good intentions and packed boxes, determined to be bolder, braver, more authentically myself. Instead, I found myself retreating into the same patterns, choosing isolation over the risk of rejection, building walls so high that nobody could climb them, which meant nobody could hurt me, but also meant nobody could reach me. By my junior year, I had perfected the art of being present while remaining completely absent, attending classes and completing assignments, while keeping every part of my real self locked away, where it couldn't be damaged. Professor Hayes was different from the beginning, though I didn't want to admit it, didn't want to acknowledge the way my heart stuttered when she smiled or the way I found myself arriving early to class just to watch her set up her notes. She was in her early 30s, with dark hair that she wore in a perpetually messy bun, sharp cheekbones that gave her an aristocratic air, and a way of moving through the world that suggested she had never doubted her right to take up space. She taught with a passion that was almost physical, pacing the front of the classroom as she dissected texts, her hands gesturing wildly, her voice rising and falling with the emotion of whatever passage we were examining. But what set her apart was the way she looked at students, not through us or past us, but directly at us, as if she genuinely cared about what we thought, what we felt, what we had to say. The first time she asked me to stay after class, my hands were shaking so badly I had to clasp them together to hide it. I assumed I had done something wrong, written something inappropriate in my last essay, crossed some invisible line. Instead, she perched on the edge of her desk, looked at me with those penetrating eyes, and told me my analysis of Emily Dickinson's use of dashes had been brilliant, insightful, the kind of thinking that showed real understanding of how form and content work together to create meaning. She said she had been teaching for 7 years and rarely encountered a student who could write with such emotional intelligence, and she wanted to know if I had considered applying for the honors thesis program, if I had thought about graduate school, if I understood how gifted I was. I remember standing there frozen, unable to process her words because nobody had ever spoken to me that way before. With such genuine respect and admiration, I mumbled something incoherent, probably thanked her, and fled the classroom as quickly as I could, my heart pounding, my mind reeling. That night I lay in my narrow dorm bed and replayed the conversation over and over, analyzing every word, every gesture, trying to understand what had happened and why it had affected me so profoundly. It wasn't just that she had praised my work, plenty of professors had given me good grades. It was that she had seen something in me that I had never seen in myself, recognized a value and worth that I had spent my entire life convinced I didn't possess. After that, everything changed, though so gradually I didn't recognize it was happening. She started calling on me more often in class, asking for my opinion, building discussions around my observations. She would catch my eye across the seminar table and smile. A small private smile that felt like it was meant only for me. She began leaving comments on my essays that went beyond the academic. Notes that acknowledged the emotion behind my analysis, the personal investment I brought to the texts we studied. I started going to her office hours, initially with legitimate questions about assignments, but eventually just to talk, to be in her presence, to experience the strange and wonderful sensation of being heard, being understood, being valued. I knew I was falling for her long before I was willing to admit it to myself. I would lie awake at night thinking about the way she laughed, throwing her head back unself-consciously, or the way she would absently tuck a strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. I found myself crafting my essays more carefully, not just to earn good grades, but to impress her, to make her proud, to be worthy of her attention. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. This feeling that was so much bigger than anything I had experienced before, this wanting that consumed me even as I tried desperately to deny it. She was my professor. She was older than me. She was probably straight, and even if she wasn't, she would never look at a mess of a girl like me with anything beyond professional interest or perhaps kind pity. The afternoon everything shifted was unremarkable at first. Just another rainy November day when the campus felt gray and melancholy. I had gone to her office to discuss my thesis proposal, a study of queer subtext in Victorian literature. I was nervous about the topic, worried it revealed too much about me, but Professor Hayes had encouraged me to pursue what truly interested me rather than playing it safe. We were discussing the challenges of analyzing texts when explicit. Queerness was impossible due to societal constraints when she said something that stopped my heart. She mentioned her own master's thesis had covered similar territory, and then almost casually, she added that part of what had driven her academic interest was her experience as a lesbian, trying to find herself reflected in the literature she loved. I must have looked shocked because she laughed, that beautiful uninhibited laugh I had come to love, and asked if I was all right. I remember nodding mechanically, my mind spinning, trying to process this information that changed everything. She continued talking about the importance of queer scholarship, about how representation in literature had evolved. But I could barely follow her words. All I could think was that she was like me, that she understood in a way I had never imagined possible, that maybe, impossibly, incredibly, I wasn't as alone as I had always believed. When she asked me directly if I was queer, her voice gentle and knowing, I found myself nodding, unable to speak, tears welling up because I had never said it out loud before, never acknowledged it to another person, and here she was, making it easy, making it safe. What happened next unfolded slowly, carefully over weeks and months. We started meeting more frequently, ostensibly to discuss my thesis, but really to talk about everything. Our lives, our experiences, our struggles with identity and belonging. She told me about coming out in graduate school, about the difficulty of navigating academia as a queer woman, about the loneliness of being perpetually othered. I told her things I had never told anyone, about the isolation of my childhood, about the fear that had governed my life, about the crushing weight of believing I was fundamentally unlovable. She listened with complete attention, never judging, never minimizing my pain, and in her listening, I began to heal in ways I hadn't known I needed. She never crossed inappropriate lines while I was her student. She maintained professional boundaries even as our connection deepened into something that felt almost unbearably intimate. But there was a tenderness in the way she looked at me, a warmth in her smiles, a lingering in our conversations that suggested she felt it too, this pull between us that defied easy categorization. The semester ended. I was no longer enrolled in her classes, and the barriers that had kept us in our respective roles began to dissolve. It was she who finally acknowledged what had been building between us, asking me to coffee one Saturday afternoon in January. A real date, not a meeting about my thesis. Just the two of us exploring what this connection might mean beyond the walls of academia. I was terrified that first date, convinced I would disappoint her, that up close and in a romantic context, I would reveal myself to be boring or broken or too damaged to love. Instead, we talked for 4 hours straight, sitting in a small cafe as the winter light faded, our hands eventually finding each other across the table. She told me I was remarkable, that watching me come into my own over the past months had been one of the great privileges of her life, that she had never met anyone with such capacity for insight and feeling. When she kissed me goodnight, standing on the street corner with snow beginning to fall, it felt like coming home to a place I had never known existed. If this story has touched your heart, if you've ever felt unseen or unworthy of love, if you believe in the transformative power of being truly recognized by another person, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Your engagement helps stories like this reach people who need them most, who are sitting alone right now convinced they'll never be loved, never be understood, never be enough. You could be the reason someone finds hope today. Our relationship wasn't easy at first. I struggled with insecurity, convinced that eventually she would realize her mistake and leave. She was patient with my fears, holding me through panic attacks, reassuring me with words and actions that her love was real and lasting. She introduced me to her friends, brought me to faculty parties, never hiding our relationship but proudly claiming me as hers. Through her eyes, I began to see myself differently, not as the invisible girl from the back row, but as someone worthy of love, capable of contributing something meaningful to the world, deserving of taking up space and speaking my truth. I'm 25 now, and Morgan and I have built a life together that feels impossibly beautiful on days when I can quiet my old demons long enough to appreciate it. We live in a small apartment filled with books with a cat named Wolf, and on Sunday mornings we drink coffee in bed and read aloud to each other. She still teaches at the university, and I'm in graduate school now, pursuing my own academic career, writing about the queer literature that helped me understand myself. I still have difficult days when the old feelings of worthlessness creep back, but now I have someone who reminds me of my value, who loves me through the darkness, who saw me when I was invisible and loved me into being. If this story resonated with you, please leave a comment sharing a moment when someone saw the real you, when you felt truly recognized and valued. Your story matters, and sharing it might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. The truth I've learned through this relationship is that love, real, transformative love, doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase trauma or cure insecurity or magically make you whole, but it can provide a safe space to do the hard work of healing, a mirror that reflects back your worth when you've forgotten how to see it yourself, a hand to hold while you learn to believe you deserve to be held. Professor Morgan Hayes caught me off guard that September morning 4 years ago. But what she really did was catch me before I disappeared completely. And in loving me, she taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned, that I was always worthy of being seen, even when I couldn't see myself.